Welcome to another episode of Recording the Dialogical Self, the official podcast brought to you in collaboration with the International Conference on the Dialogical Self 2026 in Thessaloniki. I'm your host, Prodromos Terazis, and today I'm very honored to be joined by Dr. Hermans. Welcome. So nice to have you with us. Let's start from the theory itself. How did you manage to create the theory? How do you manage to think of, in a world like that demands rigid answers, monophonic answers? How did you manage to think about that?
When I go back into history, my personal history, then originally I was a student in Nijmegen, the Netherlands. And I did a internship in the south of the Netherlands in the coal mines, which were to be closed at that time. So it's about the 70s, the coal mines should be closed. And then the psychological service received the question, how can we educate, retrain underground workers in the coal mines to chemical workers, because there was a blossoming beginning chemical industry. So all those people had to be retrained. And I was involved in that project, and they posed the question to me and my colleagues, is it possible to create a psychological test to measure motivation? So with this test, we did a lot of research. And we found that there were two factors responsible for a successful transition from underground worker to successful chemical worker. And these two factors were intelligence and motivation. And the surprising effect was that motivation was even more important than intelligence. So I was happy with that result, and I became a test constructor, and I constructed an achievement motivation test. It's just a questionnaire, standardized questionnaire to measure achievement motivation. However, some years later, I got an invitation to come to America, where I met some of my heroes, my scientific heroes. And there was at that time, that was at the end of the 1960s, there was a wave of humanistic psychology where connection and relationships, atmosphere and community were more important than achievement, competition. So I became very opposed to everything which had to do with achieving, becoming better than us, or excellence, etc. Because I wanted to have some personal relationship with another person. So I became quite angry at myself because I accused myself that I was following the mainstream values of society. So from that moment on, it was a very impressive moment of being in another country and having a new idea that I should follow another trajectory. And that trajectory was in fact the question, what method, what procedure is healthy and good for the person themselves. So not only for society and not standardized and not a ritual with multiple choice questions, but I ask you the questions, please think about your past, think about your present, and think about your future, and what do you find important? On the basis of these questions, finally I developed a self-confrontation method. Actually, is a deeper method for self-investigation. And that was the beginning of dialogue, because when we applied that method in practice, my first wife was a psychotherapist, and we could apply this method every day in psychotherapy, then I became to realize how important two kinds of dialogues are. The first kind is having a good dialogue with the therapist, who poses good questions, open questions, not multiple choice, open questions, and invites you to reflect on yourself, on your past, present and future, and the linkages between past, present, and future. And the other dialogue was the internal dialogue of the client with themselves. Because when I pose an open question, a good question to a client, the client then responds by posing that question to themselves. So it's a kind of interplay between external dialogue and internal dialogue. And this was the birth, the cradle of dialogical self theory.
In an era when we used past only to cure the present, so psychotherapy was about seeing the past in order to cure the present, not seeing the present, the past, and the future like as a story or as a continuation.
That's right, with the risk that in many certainly original therapies, also psychoanalytic therapies, the past is seen as a kind of cause of the present. So when I have some problems, these are caused by
the past,
by a kind of internal conflict with my father and my mother. Oedipus conflict, for example, is this cause of what later develops in my relationship with other people. This is not at all the basic structure of dialogical self theory, because also in that self-confrontation method, we suppose that we create. There are, of course, impressive events in the past, but at the same time, we create and recreate our past. So depending on the good contact with a psychotherapist, I can think in a different way about my past than before, and I can reconstruct the relationship with my father, with my mother. Even when they passed away, I can realize how much they were important for me, what they gave me, and I can be thankful to my parents, and this colors actually and reconstructs my past experiences. Moreover, I can move to my future. So there was a symposium today where the self is invited. So I can ask you, imagine that you are 35 years older than now. Imagine that. Okay, then you are at this moment your future self. What do you say? What questions do you have? Now, we take this future self, bring it to the present, and then have a dialogue between the present self and the future self. That's dialogical self. And then it can be that my present, particular things in my present life, become more meaningful as a result of taking the position of my future self and bring it back to the present.
And how you deal with the ambivalence? You have too many voices, inner voices. They're not aligned. Some say something different. Some say something different else. They're both right, but there is an ambivalence there.
You know, this is a very basic thing. You touch the notion of contradiction. Yeah? So the problem is, in psychology, has been that contradictions is not logical, it's not rational, it's
and
not.
They have to be fixed.
Yeah, they have to be fixed, so they have to be removed. Dialogical self theory, DST, says the opposite. Contradictions is a rich source of meaning. When you are able to find your inner contradictions, this is a basis for growth. For example, when we have a very positive self-esteem, most people like to have a positive self-esteem.
Yeah.
In that case, my bad sides, my shadow sides, I as being jealous, or even I as wanting to take revenge, or I wishing another person dead, my shadow positions, I remove them. I don't look at them. I don't give them a voice because they contradict with my positive self-esteem. So when I do that, I think I have a unified self, which is beautifully and
Successful.
successful and filled with self-esteem. So then I remove the contradiction between my self-esteem, positive, and my negatively oriented shadow positions. So much more healthy is to look and formulate your shadow positions, bring them in touch with your positive positions, and then create a dialogue. That's more healthy, because then you are more unified. But unity is not a beginning, it's not a fact, it's not just a given. Unity is an achievement. So after you have recognized your multiplicity and you have recognized your contradictions, then it's possible to achieve a state of unity, which is actually unity in multiplicity, or multiplicity in unity, which is also a kind of conceptual nice contradiction.
And how can you, let's say, in quotes, persuade someone who is successful by using only a part of himself to unify himself or herself? Because I'm very successful, everybody recognizes me, I have self-esteem, I have lots of money, and I have to move from that position to a position of unity.
No. One of the problems of our present society and culture is what they call meritocratic individualism. What does it mean? It means that you define yourself as an individual with your own worth, with the simultaneous belief that all what you achieve in your life is the result of your own capacity and your own effort. Okay, that's meritocratic individualism. Not surprisingly, there are critics who describe our culture in terms of culture of narcissism. So when you are such this beautiful unity and this successful unity, which is actually very limited, you discard and you remove many contradictive parts of yourself, with the risk that you get a narcissistic personality, or you strive for a grandiose self, which has a big chance to fail because you are not prepared to failures. So personally, I will tell that in my keynote also, I experimented with a new coalition of positions. And so I was wondering, applying this to myself, am I successful or am I a failure? Okay, so note that I use the word or. I'm successful or I'm a failure. So actually I cannot answer these questions in terms of or, because sometimes I feel successful. Some people come to me and they say, you are quite successful. And then I say, I don't know. I often feel a failure too. So finally, I was thinking, what when we bring these two together? So I am a successful failure. So I'm a successful failure. I am both, not or, but and. Well, when I applied that to myself, what I discovered is that this combination, they call it a third position, combination of two other positions, which are in fact in conflict. But when I bring them together in a third conflict, is minimum unity in the self. And at that moment, I was more adept both to relativize my successes, but also to tolerate my failures. So I can, at the moment of a failure, I could say to myself, but I'm also sometimes successful. When I'm successful, and it could be that I become narcissistic, then I say to myself, okay, wait, but you are also, but these are the things which were not so good. The advantage of this combination, that you learn from yourself, because the best learning is failure with the prospect of incidental success, which is followed by failure again. So it's a kind of alternation of success and failure, but bringing them together is a healthy contradiction.
Yeah, and often people suffer from just having one voice. I'm a failure, or I have to be successful.
Exactly. So then you have a kind of dualistic system.
Yeah.
The dualistic system is, or you are successful with the risk that you become narcissistic, or you are a failure and then you become depressed.
Yeah. And this also goes to society. You have, for instance, to be conservative or liberal. You have to be pro-LGBT or anti-LGBT. You have to be pro-Christian or anti-Christian. This goes to society too.
It's we learned in this society to create a binary self. Binary self. So it means you are or this or that. You are pro or you are against. Where are you standing? My favorite is that, and I'm against So then you split. In fact, this is split between pro and anti. And the challenge of the dialogical self is to really look at the interface of pro and anti, the interface of happy and unhappy, the interface of success and failure, the interface of my past and my future. So the interfaces are relevant for psychological development. And in my view, we have in our society the illusion that we know what the self is. When I ask you, can you point where your self is, then you typically, people point with their finger to their breast or to their head.
The inner.
Yeah, in the inner. So we are educated on the basis of an illusion. The illusion is that myself is inside my skin. But that's a misunderstanding. Already William James, philosopher and psychologist, in 1889, he proposed the existence of an extended self, which means that I'm not only myself, but I'm also what is mine. And for example, my wife, my children, my parents, my father, my mother, my friends, my house, nature around me belong to myself. So, and then we go back. Yeah, sure. And then we go back to dialogical self theory. Dialogical self theory makes a distinction between internal positions and external positions. For example, I consider myself as a dreamer, in my past even more than now, a dreamer, but I was also a recognition seeker. And I was also a failure at school, in primary school. I failed, deep experiences of failure. And actually my task was to find an answer to these original experiences of failure. So the risk is that, again, we have this binary conception of the self in a binary society where you are pro or anti. The challenge for us is to first see our multiplicity, to give the multiple parts a name, and then bring them into context so that they can listen to each other. So is it possible that I listen to my shadow side, my shadow position? And I can, when I do that, I can ask, okay, for example, when I'm very ambitious, over-ambitious, I can, okay, I see myself as over-ambitious. I put you there on a chair and I pose you a question. What the hell are you so self-ambitious? You make me suffer. You make that I'm always overactive, that I want to be perfect. Why are you doing that? Okay, and then I address my shadow position and ask him to give me an answer to these challenging questions. And finally, I did this exercise. Finally, the shadow positions criticized me, but also said to me, I wanted to protect you because you failed at school and then you became, as a compensation, you became ambitious, and ambitious was a kind of protection. So I helped you. Okay, so my shadow side was somewhere my enemy, which I hate. But at the same time, this enemy, when I started a dialogue with him, convinced me that he was also my friend, because he helped me when I was young to overcome my initial failure.
Yeah, and like a traditional therapist would say, leave this part of yourself, which needs to be so successful, in order to find serenity, calmness, not to push yourself too much.
Absolutely. So the question is, for example, I give you an example of myself. My ambitious side did not disappear. So I know that I like writing, for example. I'm a passionate writer. Writing and publishing books was initially the result of my over-ambitious position, right? But later, when I became older, I left university. I had not much obligations, and I had much more freedom. Also, freedom of and broadening my inner space. I had more space to think, to explore, and to go to different places. And there I found some rest, some serenity. So what I do, I solve this problem by working hard in the morning. And, well, this is my passionate writing, initially supported by my ambitious position, which became less dominant in the course of time. But my most important compensation is I go in the afternoon, I take my bike, and I bike in nature. And that gives me the peace of mind, the calmness, the rest, to just be in the moment. And when I have this, say, alternation between hardworking and total relaxing, then these two positions compensate each other. They help each other in a, you could say, a balanced kind of life.
But can you say that people find comfort in binary places, in binary selves? Some people find some comfort in there.
Yeah, you know.
Why do they find?
Okay, yes, I see. I would say they feel some kind of certainty in the binary system.
Yeah.
Because you could say that at this moment, maybe more than ever, in a society with open boundaries, with a lot of immigration, with many people feeling threatened, with a future which is highly unsure, with your personal job, which can disappear after a few years. So the stability is reduced and the uncertainty is increasing. So when you feel uncertain, then it's very attractive to move to binary thinking. Because the binary thinking, it gives you the idea, here I stand, I know the truth. Some people, they believe in conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theory is a very nice example, because when I support such a theory, which other people tell me, okay, I have the truth. I know how the society works. I know who is my hero. This political person, he is great. He protects me. He is remove all the dangers. He promises a great future. So in this way, I remove my personal responsibility and give it to my hero, who is telling me a conspiracy theory. So the conspiracy theory is an artificial certainty which protects me from the uncertainty. In my view, it's much more healthy, not only for the person, but also for society, to start to admit and to accept that you are uncertain. So the normal state of mind at this moment in history is not certainty, it's uncertainty. So we live in an uncertain situation. The society is uncertain. It means that I, myself, as extended to society, is also uncertain. So then the question is, how do I respond to my basic uncertainty? And that's the beginning of dialogue.
How people would respond to this uncertainty, other than polarizing or hurting each other, or fighting the other voice? Because you have like people dealing with this uncertainty by hating other voices?
The problem with uncertainty is that there is a particular level where uncertainty broadens your mind. So when I'm uncertain, I think it could be this, it could be that, it could also be that. That is one possibility, that is another possibility. Mm-hmm. So the inner space is broadened by an optimal level of uncertainty. However, when uncertainty raises and becomes very intense, and many parts of my life become very, very and more uncertain, then uncertainty changes into anxiety. When there is anxiety, then there is this spontaneous reaction of, I have to defend myself against this culminating anxiety. So, and then it becomes attractive to believe a political leader or another person who gives me the truth. But the truth does not exist.
Yeah,
right?
Does not.
No.
Yeah. How do you see the future of clinical practice in general?
I think the future of clinical, one important aspect of the future of clinical psychology and psychotherapy is to approach people not from the point of view of a clinical dysfunction. So you are borderline, okay? The therapist thinks this is ADHD, or this person is a kind of psychosis. So I have a number of clinical categories available, and when I'm a psychotherapist and I look at the client only from that point of view, then unconsciously I am validating my initial diagnosis. So all my questioning are somewhere motivated from one big assumption that you have this dysfunction. So the psychotherapist is in fact, if he is doing that, an authoritarian or authoritative psychotherapist who is more validating his initial diagnostic system than really listening to the client. What does it mean to listen to the client? But that's the point. Listening is very difficult, much more difficult than speaking. So listening means that you put your own preoccupations and all your knowledge and all your clinical systems at the background and open a space where you are fully concentrated on that person in front of you. You forget your system. Open yourself to the person and ask you the question, what is important from the perspective of that person? What is the self-image of the person? How does the person think about themselves? And I try to place myself in the shoes of that client, create empathy, feel from the perspective of the client, and maybe afterwards you could, as one of the voices, is the clinical voice, is the diagnostic voice. But it's not the starting point, it's not the truth, it's one of the possibilities. Because a person is always, that's my point, a person is always richer than one clinical diagnosis. Always. Mm. Because everybody, even when there is one dominant side of myself, position in myself, there are always exceptions. And these exceptions are very important. Yeah, so you can, for example, when a person is depressed, a good question is, okay, John, can you tell me one moment in your past, maybe when you was a child, where you were not depressed, when a moment of happiness, a small moment of happiness? Very good questions, because you ask an exception, and this exception is the beginning of multiplicity.
And this applies to traditional medicine too. For instance, you have to know the story of the person in order for suffering from heart, for suffering from diabetes, suffering. You have to know the person itself, the story of the person, not just the diagnosis. Okay, I have to give you this pill in order to,
Yeah, that's right. You know, the older I become, I begin to realize that the other person is unknown. I think it's a very good starting point. You are not known for me. So, and then I open this possibility that I do not know you. No categorization. I do not categorize you on the basis of gender, age, religion, race, etc. Then I create an open mind and I want to know more about you. So tell me your story. Tell me your preferences. Tell me about some happy or unhappy experiences. And then I open my ears and listen to you. Mm-hmm. You know, we have the tendency of imprisoning the other person on the basis of our preconceptions. But they are my inner prisons. I'm imprisoned in my own preconceptions and ideas. And just I have to break them down in order to reach another person.
Is this easy for younger therapists?
It's really difficult, but you know, it's a matter of training. We can't train young people to do this. Okay, so we are learning animals. We can learn a lot. Initially we don't know, so we can overcome our preconceptions. We can also criticize our own culture. What are the limitations of our culture? Okay, look at another culture. How are they doing that? You know,
well,
people who visit different cultures, they become very relative to their own culture because they say, oh, it can also be different. I see there that you look in a very different way to the same things, which for us are certain, sure. No, now I broaden my mind and I see a multiplicity of possibilities.
Is there any other thing that I haven't asked you had in mind coming here today in the podcast?
Oh, coming here is... so this is my most intense week in 2 years. So this week for me happens more than in 1 week a whole year, seriously. So I meet many people, I talk to many people, it's absolutely overwhelming. And when I go back, I'm confused. Which is a very good thing, because the confusion is the beginning of learning. So I remember a lot of things, and some people, they told me things which I just didn't know. So I do not know all those things. You know, all those people know things, also on the practical level, which I don't know. So I better listen to them or ask them, could you please help me? I will tell you, I was about, say, 50 years ago. I was very afraid of criticism. I had made a new method, the self-confrontation method, and I was not ready to give a lecture on that method because I was afraid that
they will attack you.
They will attack me, so I don't give a lecture. Now, 50 years later, I'm the opposite. I say, please criticize me, because I know that the only thing from which I learn is criticism, because I can improve myself. When I know my weak sides, the empty sides of my knowledge, then you can help me and I become more broad, more informed, more open to other people, because I realized the limitations of my existing knowledge. So I fully understand Socrates. Socrates, he started with the conviction, I know nothing, you know. I'm just an open mind, and I ask you, what do you think? And I learned from that. So not knowing is the beginning of dialogue.
Thanks so much for being here and sharing all these thoughts.
It was a pleasure for me. Thank you for your good questions.
Thank you.